Hey guys, Furum here, and today I'm going to be testing the Ferrari Roma at Golden Max in Asphalt 9 multiplayer. This car currently has a car hunt going for it at the time I'm recording this, but I would not recommend spending too much time on it, nor would I recommend spending really any tokens on it, and I will explain why. This is a B-class car at 3000 rank at Golden Max. The highest end B-class cars have a rank of around 4000. Rank is not everything, but in this case it's a pretty good indicator that this car is nowhere near close to the top of Class B, and such is the case. The Roma only goes 214 miles per hour when completely maxed out, which is about the same as a maxed out Corvette Grand Sport. Also, with the acceleration being at 77, that is the same as a Corvette Grand Sport, but the nitro and the handling in particular are not as good, and noticeably not so, and so that is why this car is just definitely not going to be a great B-class car. The Corvette Grand Sport is already pretty close to the middle of its class in events, and still somewhat high in multiplayer. When comparing the Roma to the Corvette took away pretty much everything that made the Corvette actually good in multiplayer. That really great nitro efficiency, and that really great handling and drifting. This car doesn't have either of those. Its nitro is definitely good, I would say, probably above average, or at least average, but still, nothing special, and while I enjoy driving the car in this season, it seemed to be fairly stable. It's not one that I would expect to see a lot in multiplayer going forward, and I really don't recommend you try to go for more than unlocking it if you really want to. But as with all new cars added to Asphalt 9, I wanted to do a multiplayer review of it. All these races, 7 of them, were recorded in the Ferrari Roma multiplayer season, and a good chunk of them were recorded in the top 100, which yes, I am trying to go for again in some multiplayer seasons. I may not stay up there, but it's always cool to reach that. Another cool thing is that this car actually has a slightly purple, at least, official paint, which I'm using right now, in certain lights. In some others, like right now, it doesn't really look like it, but it was more so than any of the other ones. Also, the Grand Prix has been going pretty well for me so far. I was able to qualify, and I will be trying to win this car if I don't have to spend any tokens on it, because I only have 1900 right now, as you've seen at the beginning of the video. Trying to build those up back a bit more before the next update, because I don't really think I'm going to be going for anything else in this update, so probably I'll just keep on saving until the next really big nice thing comes out, and then splurge on it. And that's usually what I do, and it seems to have worked out fairly well so far. I do that in real life too. Anyway, we are coming up toward the end of the second race here, which was pretty close. I put the closest races that I recorded in this video, because those are always the ones that I feel are most interesting to watch. And there's a new feature later in the video that I'm not exactly sure how new it is, but it's something that happens so rarely in multiplayer that you don't see it very often. Some of you might know what I'm talking about, but stick around if you don't, and you might just learn something new. So now we're on to the third race, which is on Himalayas, which was a very close duel against Mia. Now, when I saw this track, I decided to try something that I have seen people do, but that I wasn't sure was actually faster. If you go just barely off to the left of this ramp, you can get a low barrel, and if you land just right, you can actually get a little bit of a speed boost to get ahead, and it worked out for me. Also, I got a little bit of a bump right ahead of the ramp there. I'm pretty sure that's because the ramp isn't actually completely flush with the terrain. Yeah, if you go back and watch that part slower, or if you see it on the track yourself, you'll notice that it's slightly raised toward the right, so if you go up that ramp toward the right, sometimes you'll get that weird little bump. I decided to not go for the inside of that track because I didn't want to hit it and lose a bunch of speed. Then I go up this ramp, but I'm pretty sure the other player did, and I landed on them when I landed. Thankfully, both of us had shockwave, so neither of us got knocked down. That was pretty crazy because I barely put on shockwave ahead of landing on them. And oftentimes, if you land on somebody who has shockwave and you don't, you actually get knocked down. That doesn't happen all the time by any means, but sometimes it does, and if you're in shockwave though, it just will never happen. So we're coming up toward the end of this race. I extended a little distance, but then they started catching up to me again. What I think happened, and I didn't go back and check this, but I was using the brake nitro trick to conserve some nitro so that I'd be able to go up the ramp with some nitro. I think what happened was that they were then saving up, so just doing the brake trick to save up nitro to shockwave up the ramp, so that's why they got a bit behind, but then started catching up a bit more. Then I got the same track again, and I wanted to see if I could do the same trick again to see if I could get ahead at the same way. Unfortunately, it didn't quite barrel me as much as I wanted, I landed on my side, thankfully didn't wreck and was able to come back, but it did lose me a bit of speed, so doing things like that can be somewhat risky, and there I also got a very slow barrel. That happened twice in this race. I don't entirely know why, but because of that, the other player got ahead of me, and I decided to try to go toward the inside of the truck, and this actually helped me quite a bit because he hit it, I think, and pushed it out of the way, which didn't really hurt me, but I was able to get a shorter line, shockwave up, and pass him, just barely avoiding landing on him, just maybe a foot away it looked like to me. Went up the wall to gain as much airspeed there as I could, and then was just going to try to do the exact same thing as I did in the previous Himalayan race to take the victory. Now, these races weren't actually recorded right after one another. I think I was about 60 rating higher in this one, and the reason why I didn't put any of the videos in between was just because generally they were boring, and I don't want to bore you guys, so I don't put ones like those in. So we barely come in first again, and in the next race, we're facing somebody who I saw several times in the season, TF Widowmaker, and we had some pretty close races. Now, this race here was pretty close, but I put it in mainly because of a pretty interesting and close stunt to not working, but that actually ended up working pretty well, that I had later in the race. So here I'm able to pass him toward the very beginning, and around these turns is where you can really see that this car does not have the greatest handling at all. It is a fairly stiff car to drive. It may not be quite as stiff as something like the, say, FWLR or Alfieri, but it feels fairly close. And that is why sometimes you have to be a little bit careful going around turns in this car, like coming up here. I didn't just go straight. I was afraid of going off to the right if I did that. I braked in midair and then turned in midair, which is weird. And then here is the crazy stunt part. I go low and then hit just the very edge, flying up into the air, still with the shockwave though. I don't really know if that helped or hurt me all that much, but it looked pretty cool, and so I wanted to share it. For anybody who is wondering, I am still planning to make a sort of best and worst cars in each class video before the next update comes out. Still, my most preferred method, at least what I'm thinking in my head now of doing it, is sort of a tier list kind of thing, where I don't specifically order all of the cars, but just be like, okay, these are the best few cars in this class. These are the next best few cars in this class. So group them like that, rather than directly ranking them one above each other for a few reasons. First of which is because some cars may just really not be much better than other ones at all, or maybe only better than other ones on certain tracks, but then they're better on other tracks. And so ones like those, I would feel much more comfortable just grouping together and saying, okay, these are fairly similar in performance, but they're both some of the best cars in the class, rather than being like, okay, this one is above this one and this one is above this one, but they're really all really close, and then people get heated up in the comments about it. And I think this is another great way to avoid that as well, because in some classes like Class A and Class B, there are some cars that are just so close to each other in terms of the performance that it's really difficult to get a good objective ranking as to which one is really better, and oftentimes it comes down to personal preference. So I kind of hope to help with that with this new method that I'm planning on trying. And here's the new thing. Now when someone leaves the race, it says win by forfeit. I think this has been in the game for an update or two at least, but I hadn't really seen it before this, or I hadn't been paying attention to it, but someone pointed out in my Discord a few days ago. Link will be in the description, by the way. Purple Team Discord. Shameless plug in the middle of my video. But anyway, that's something fairly new that I don't think a lot of people may be aware of. So we are now to the final race in the video, and we're racing SL Killamal, who I saw many times in the top 100 of the season, and weirdly inconsistently, when I hit him with the perfect nitro, unlike the race before it, I did not knock him down. I wasn't planning to knock down the other guy the first time anyway. It's just strange how one time one thing happens, other time other thing happens. That's one thing. Asphalt 9's physics, while they sometimes work well and other times just don't, they are never very consistent. But as we battle this guy off, it is now time for my general review about this car. It is definitely not the greatest B-class car. In fact, it's probably a pretty low one. Drives okay, but is really nothing special at all. None of its stats particularly stand out. It's one of those cars that's probably going to be very quickly forgotten because there's nothing about it that makes you really remember it. It's just some car hunt car that's 3000 rank in low to mid B-class, and probably no one's ever going to drive it again. Unless, of course, they make it an obscure requirement to have for some special event down the line. I can totally see them doing that, but still, that's so unlikely that I really wouldn't recommend spending much on this car at all. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like the video if you've enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more Asphalt and other games content, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!